floors, echoes of our family lore. Grandpa's jump shot, dad's fast break, our legacy will never shake. Keys to the gym, unlocking our hearts.
Welcome back, Keys to the Gym listener. This is the coach.
And the PG.
And we're excited to be here with you for week number 4. We are headed into the home stretch of the WNBA season. We did not pick a game of the week this week. We're going to just dive into a few different topics related to what's happening in the league. Some exciting games, but we're in the home stretch and things are starting to tighten up. 5 out of the 8 playoff teams have been locked in for this week, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some of those things that we're seeing. But my goodness, I think my stat of the week this week, watching the WNBA, what do you think my stat of the week is this week?
I don't know.
Really? You don't have any guesses about what I think the stat of the week is?
Nope.
I think how many travels were missed in the Indiana Fever Dallas Wings game today. I think that's the stat of the week. I mean, my goodness, can you imagine being like in the referee's room watching tape? Because referees watch film too, right? Watching the film after that game thinking, how did we miss the 3 or 4 steps that were taken on numerous occasions, right? Like, oh my goodness, it was a tough one. Really glad that didn't decide the game. The Wings led like the entire way. They seem to really be giving the Fever trouble this season. And Enrique had another big game. She's just a straight up bucket, just an absolute straight up bucket. But here's my question for you. If you had to pick a rookie of the year in the WNBA as of today, with 2 weeks to go, who are we picking?
It's got to be Caitlin Clark.
All right, tell me why.
She just impacts the game in so many different ways.
Okay.
And a lot of people have been talking about Angel Reese and how she's up in the running. And I just don't think she impacts the game in as many ways as Caitlin Clark does.
Okay. I mean, in fairness, I don't know that the Sky are quite as far along in their organizational development with that roster. Man, can you imagine if Angel Reese was on the same team as Caitlin Clark?
That's
I mean, you're talking about 2 players who are doing things in the game today as rookies that have never been done. I mean, 100% never been done. And you think about the league's been around 25 years. You think about some of the Hall of Fame level players, whether it's college or professional, who have played in the league. It's kind of crazy to think that they're doing those things. Now, obviously, there's going to be a little asterisk here and there, right? Because the league has expanded to 40 games. And so, but there was a great article on Fox Sports recently about, I think it was Friday that it came out, just about each of them and how and the goal of the article, I think in many ways is kind of set the expectations as to what they have done, what they have accomplished to this point, irrespective of how many games that they've played in the league. And listen, you can, the 2 knocks on each of them, right? So with Angel Reese, the knock, and again, it's kind of silly, is, she's rebounding her own misses. Well, today she had 17 rebounds, I think, at least with a couple minutes to go in that game. And she had 10 defensive rebounds, right? So if you just took the offensive rebounds out of the game and she scored 17 points and had 10 rebounds, like for most players, that's a heck of a night, right? She's constantly like, I think we have to stop that narrative and that nonsense because she's a rookie and she's going to continue to develop as a player offensively. But the fact that she is impacting the game in a way, I mean, you take her off that roster, and obviously they've been without Kennedy Carter over the last couple of weeks. Hopefully she's back to help them here in this playoff push soon. But if you just take her off that team, I mean, goodness, I'm not sure quite where the Sky would be because she does impact the game. And I agree with you, Soph, that I think it probably is Caitlin Clark. I think she's probably pushed herself into at least just the discussion around MVP. There are other players who have had bigger impacts, but I do think it's probably her. And then for Caitlin Clark, right, it's the number of turnovers she's had. Obviously, she's their primary ball handler. Obviously she will, attempt to accomplish some things on the court that are probably a little bit aggressive, adjusting to the speed of the game, adjusting to style of play. But as we've seen, I mean, in their last 10 games, the Fever are 8-2. They've won 4 straight. And so I just think, those two players, what they have accomplished and the tone that they've set for young players coming into the league is otherworldly. So if you had to pick a player of the year today, who are you picking?
Asia Wilson.
Okay, tell me why. Why Asia Wilson?
I mean, it's just her presence on the court. Honestly, just her being there scares away a lot of people. And the way that she controls the pace of the game, even being a big inside, really surprises me. So,
do you have somebody that's right behind? If it wasn't going to be Asia Wilson, that you think is really close to being at that level?
I mean, Nafisa Collier on the Lynx has been really impressive over the last couple of weeks. So it's between Asia Wilson and Collier, but I think it's got to be Asia Wilson.
Okay. That's interesting. I agree with that completely. I think those are probably the top two. And, Nafisa Collier's had a huge impact with head coach Cheryl Reeve with a resurgence with the Lynx this year. They obviously made a big acquisition with Courtney Williams, who offered them leadership at the guard spot, leadership at the point guard spot. And as a facilitator that they really didn't have a year ago. And so as of today, you've got the Liberty in the first spot, the Sun, Connecticut Sun in the second spot, the Minnesota Lynx in the third spot, the Aces at the fourth spot, and the Storm at the fifth spot. And then Indiana moved up into the sixth spot by way of a tie. Well, now it's not a tie because the Mercury lost today. So Indiana's now a game ahead of Phoenix, and then the Sky in the eighth spot. And so, probably the last bit of movement, it's going to be what happens between the Sun and the Lynx for that second and third spot. Right now, they're a half a game apart, which will get sorted out here in the next week. So 7-8 games to play. And then the 5, 6, the fifth and sixth spots, 5, 6, 7. So, really the 6th and 7th spot, right, with the Fever and the Mercury really being a game apart. But outside of that, you've got a pretty solid playoff picture. The Dream remain in the hunt for that 8th spot. So the Sky getting Kennedy Carter back would be really important if that were to occur, to give them that scoring punch at the guard spot that they've really been lacking. And that showed up Friday night in their loss to the Fever. The Fever's biggest deficiency continues to be the defensive side of the ball. I think in their last 10 games, they've defended better. But today against the Wings, they gave it 93. So, again, not to have an overplayed analogy of defense wins championships, but you got to be able to get stops when it matters most. I don't think their scoring's an issue. Kelsey Mitchell's been an absolute bucket. And I think for young players, I would really encourage younger players, developing players, to watch Kelsey Mitchell. Tell me why. What do you think I'm going to say?
She just makes the right decisions at the right moments in the game, and she makes tough shots.
Yeah, there's one more thing I'm looking for. What do you think that other piece of information I'm looking for? There's one other item.
Oh, she moves really well off the ball.
Yeah. Listen, we talk all the time, and this has been a topic. I just really want to encourage players to watch her as a player, because not only is she really good with the ball and can get you a bucket in late shot clock situations, but she and Clark and the other players in their primary rotation, she just is a scorer without the ball. And in the women's game right now, I'm not sure I'm seeing somebody who is as good off the ball as a scorer. And, that's really important. So really interesting time of year, exciting time of year with just 2 weeks left, about 2 weeks left in the WNBA season. It's been an incredible season for the league. 25 years, we're seeing attendance way up, right? We're seeing a lot of additional media coverage. They've just renegotiated the NBA and WNBA's TV contracts. I know that there's some belief that maybe that new media rights deal for the WNBA could have been larger. It's hard to know exactly whether it's valued at the right level, but it's just a really exciting time for the game. And we're excited to be able to be a part of that conversation with you all here on our podcast. Anything else for you as you think about this kind of weekend roundup as we are 2 weeks out for the close of the season? Anything that stood out to you from any of the games that we watched this week?
No, I think we hit everything. I'm really excited for the playoffs.
Okay. All right. So a couple of weeks ago, we talked a little bit about you making a transition to a new school. You just had,
Mm-hmm.
you just got started. Tell me about the beginning of school for you.
It's not been as bad as I thought it would be. Transitioning.
Really?
Yeah.
Bad? It's not as bad as we thought it was going to be. You're really going to go there?
I'm really enjoying school.
Okay.
Obviously, the first week of school is like, read this syllabus, have your parents sign this syllabus. Not much like learning, I would say, going on.
Okay.
But I'm really enjoying school.
What class are you most excited about, like right now, if you had to pick one?
Oh, that's hard. It's either between AP Gov and English.
Okay.
I love to read, and I'm really into the politics.
Okay. All right. Well, one of the things we're going to take some time, you and I have been talking a lot about, and we've mentioned it briefly as I raised the article about Ohio State's athletics department, speaking about some of the new outcomes from the House versus the NCAA court case, is we're going to make some time here in the next 2 weeks to dig deep into this topic of business of sports, name, image, and likeness, what it means, what are some of the potential outcomes, and particularly the Title IX case. You're someone who has interest in the law, so we're going to take some time to blend the two topics of the law and of sport, because it's an interesting case. It's an interesting time for us to be following that, and excited to dig into that with you. So we're going to transition now to your segment, 2 Feet in the Paint with the PG. So tell me a little bit about what else happened for you this week. It's plans right around how we're going to spend some of this time, and as you prepare for your freshman basketball season. But tell me what else is on your mind, what you're working through, and then get us into your segment.
So, how long ago was it? A couple days ago, a week ago?
Is it not Monday night?
Yeah. So about a week ago, was at a pickup game, and I think I got run over and like stepped on maybe, and I fractured my.
Man, you are making that sound incredibly dramatic. I got run over and stepped on. It was a basketball play, right? It's a basketball play. These things happen. I mean, it's not like getting punched in the face or anything, but.
Yeah. I fractured my fibula, so I wanted to touch on today the importance of the work that we do for our bodies off of the court.
Okay.
And what I've been doing to try to stay in shape and stay in good health. So I've been doing a lot of lifting, like obviously not like squats and all that stuff, but a lot of abs and upper body work.
Okay.
To keep myself in shape. And I've gotten on the bike a lot recently.
Okay.
And I've just been taking time to think about like rest time is just as important as on the court time, which I do struggle with, as everyone knows in our household. But I've also been focusing on nutrition, trying to keep track of my protein. It's important for muscle recovery. And so taking time to really dive deep into those aspects. Sleeping is also important. So I'm just trying to do everything I can to get back on the court. Hopefully I'll be cleared by Friday, but we'll see.
Yeah. And we were talking through this. So those are all really great things. I want to dig into each of those a little bit more. But, we were trying to set some expectations for you a little bit about, you've been pretty fortunate to not have had really, an ankle here or there, which is kind of par for the course, right? As a basketball player, as an athlete in general, but it's common to turn an ankle here and there. And It's certainly important to be able to navigate that, but you've been fortunate to not to this point have to deal with like real injury. So this is really a first in many ways for you. But I tried to talk with you a little bit about, okay, this idea that you're going to go back in, they're going to re-X-ray, doctor's going to review it again and give some guidance on what happens next. And it's like, just because they might say, well, you don't need to wear the boot every day, doesn't mean like we go from 0 to 100 miles an hour, right? And that if we were following sort of a progression from really not doing anything on the court for a couple of weeks to now getting back in, like there has to be a progression to this, right? There has to be, okay, now we're going to take a week, try to get some cardio back, try to get some comfort with movement again, right? And now that and then another week, maybe we can start to get into a little bit of live game, but it's going to take a couple of weeks to start to reintroduce some of those things, right? And so you're fortunate with, the injury that you have, that it's not, doesn't appear at this moment in time to be like a 6 to 8 week prognosis, right? And so, but there's another part of this too that's important, and that is listening to our bodies. Because what else did you learn when you got X-rayed and the doctor sat down and talked about the X-rays with you?
That I had actually also had a stress fracture on the same bone that had healed, and we had no idea.
Well, right, and so
I said it hurt.
So you've had some experience with shin splints in the past, right? Where does that typically occur, on what part of the leg?
The tibia?
Yeah, the front part of your leg, right? Down the front. And you've had experience with that in the past, playing some soccer and running a little bit. Where was your discomfort?
Fibula.
Right. So on the outside, on the back, outside of your leg, it's a delicate balance for athletes of understanding and listening to our bodies, right? So the answer was, we'll put the compression sleeve on. I'm sure it'll be fine. And, all things considered, you certainly were, but you played for another like 6 weeks at a pretty heavy clip. And, at some point we got to be a little bit mindful about what we're feeling and whatnot. You've historically done a pretty good job as a younger athlete of, trying to understand the importance of icing, even when we're not injured, icing when we're sore, right? But all of those recovery things, as you start to get older as an athlete, these are the things that are sometimes a little bit harder to understand, right? And that is, getting to a place where I'm not just Gumby anymore, where I can go 100 miles an hour and throw myself all over the court and play at the speed that you're used to playing at, which is important, but then just be able to wake up and do it again tomorrow without any consideration. So let's talk a little bit about the nutrition piece. So how have you matured from a nutrition perspective? Like, what are the things that you've had to work at and trying to making sure you're getting the right amount of protein? Talk me through some of the things that you're eating now that maybe you weren't eating as much of previously that you feel like is helping.
So previously I was a very like Rice Krispies.
We call that air in this house, right?
But I've been focusing on like eating more protein. So I've been having eggs in the morning typically, and then packing as much meat and cheese as I can on my sandwich just to make sure I get my protein at lunch. So just focusing on 3 meals a day is not enough most of the time. So having good snacks in between as well, like cheese sticks and nuts and other things like that. So I've been working on that a lot.
Maybe pack a second sandwich. I don't know. Just saying, maybe a second sandwich wouldn't be bad. No, it's really good. I think it's important. And, I think the hard part is, understanding what your body needs, obviously giving yourself calories, right? So Coach Bradley at Will Bradley Sports Performance talks about like, I remember him sharing with us, like, you stop at Chick-fil-A, instead of getting fries, get a second chicken sandwich, right? If you're really hungry, like it's okay to eat, consume the calories, right? As much as the protein's important, you also need the overall calories every day as well. And so making sure you're just like, if you're hungry, eat something, right? And obviously the more you can do with making sure it's things that are probably a little bit more substantive, that's really good. But but if you're hungry, eat, right? Don't stop. I mean, I think that's really important because the level of activity that really competitive athletes are putting in, you need those sorts of things. Talk to me a little bit about your kind of your daily schedule. What does a daily schedule look like for you when it comes to your daily start? You know, your day in terms of what school looks like now. And this is a little different than what we've had in the past, but what's a typical day look like for you? And how are you managing, navigating, getting the things done that you want to get done with also your school schedule and thinking about that,
So
getting rest?
is this pre-injury?
Yeah, just the typical, typical schedule. How are you trying to think about the balance of your schedule?
So I would usually go, since school starts a little bit later, it starts at 9:25. I've been trying to get in the gym every morning. And then my plan would be, obviously this was my plan before getting injured, but my plan would be to go shower, and then I would have time to probably about 40 to 45 minutes before school to get any extra homework or studying done. And then I'd go to all my classes. And then after school, we either have a basketball workout. So on the days that I'm working out in the morning, we'll have an after school workout, and I'll go to that. And then the rest of the night, I'm probably doing homework, obviously eating dinner. So
I know that, you're not doing a fall sport right now. You did play a spring sport in addition to doing some AAU. So that's a pretty good outline. In August, kind of once the AAU season wrapped up in July, you had really been approaching it as sort of like 2 visits to the gym a day. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you structured those? Like, how did you try to use that time when you had the opportunity? All right. And you're going to be getting into some fall preseason stuff as well, which would be great. But when you have access to in your schedule 2 gym visits a day, how are you thinking about structuring that time, right? How are you thinking about, okay, in the morning I'm doing this, in the afternoon I'm doing this, over the course of the week?
So getting the gym twice a day, I usually like to do 2 different things. Like in the morning, if I'm getting a bunch of shots up, then in the afternoon, I'll do, if I don't have a team workout, I'll do finishing, things like that. But if I do have a team workout, I talk to Coach Hackett about what we're doing. And then in the morning, I do something different just to get a balance, making sure I'm getting through everything in one day.
Sure.
So,
okay. Yeah. So, it's one of the things that, as getting a chance to work with you and thinking through like planning, how are we going to work with an athlete, a basketball player, making shots, getting those reps in is really important. How many makes can we get in an hour? When you have access to a shooting machine, that certainly you can get a lot of things done from just a catch and make standpoint. As the equipment has advanced, right, and it has more capabilities, you can now work that into getting a lot of game shots. I know that when we're into the gym together, when we have a block of time, we want to make sure that as players, you're working up to game shots, right? So, you talked about last week, form shooting, right? Form shooting counts in your makes because what you're doing is that shot should be the most perfect shot that you're taking as you're getting loose and getting warmed up, eventually working out to 10, 12, 15 feet. Now working on some catch and shoot footwork, right? Whether we're doing, 45 degree turns or 180 degree turns, or we're working on pickups. So working out to that place, but getting a segment in where you're getting a bunch of shots, but then also getting a segment in that we're doing some sort of skill work. Now, when things are really organized and really coordinated, so some of those game shooting workouts are going to include what a lot of coaches will talk about as skill stacking, right? So some ball handling, some passing, and then some off-ball movement. So we're talking about reads, especially when you're just talking about working with one player at a time. You start to bring 2 players, 3 players into it. Now you can really do some different things, and I think those become really valuable. But you've done a really good job of making sure that you're balancing how that time is being spent. And so That's really important. And then a rhythm and a routine. You mentioned sleep.
Yeah.
So typically, how much are you sleeping each day?
I usually get 9 hours of sleep a night.
Okay.
And what helps with this is I usually read before bed every night
Sure.
instead of being on a screen, because screen time before bed usually um, does not help with sleep.
Sure.
So reading kind of just winds me down.
Sure. What are we reading right now?
I just finished my book, Fahrenheit 451.
All right.
So
this is a kind of a classic, right? This is like a pretty notable classic. What'd you think?
It was really good. I enjoyed it. Kind of like older. I think it was, this book was the 60th anniversary of that book. So obviously a little bit older style writing, but it was very good.
All right. Give me a couple other books you've read in the last like month.
I think a week ago, I was talking about The Girls of Atomic City.
Yes. All right. We're going to get back to that one in a second. What else you got?
I read, I've been reading this series called Gone.
Okay.
And I don't know, I have my reading list upstairs.
Okay. All right.
But I've read at least 9 books in August, I believe.
All right.
So
tell me more about Girls of Atomic City.
It was about the sites that worked on building the atomic bomb, and how most of those workers were women, and how none of them knew what they were building and what they were creating until after it came out. And so it was very interesting.
Anything else that you took away from that? I mean, it's a historical events, right?
I mean, it was just very interesting to see the author got perspectives from 5 different women who worked in the camps. And it was very interesting to see the different perspectives. Like each of them were working a different job at the camp. So just the different perspectives were really interesting to me.
Okay. It's cool. One other book recommendation. If you were to make a book recommendation to our listeners, what would you throw out there? Something from the last month. You said you read 9 books in August. Okay.
Either The Girls of Atomic City or a memoir called Know My Name.
Okay.
By Chanel Miller.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, either one of those 2.
Okay. Awesome. So you've got a bit of a rhythm to your schedule. You mentioned how obviously taking the time to read in the evening kind of winds you down, allows you to shut that brain down. And I think there's plenty of research that speaks to the kinds of things we want to be doing before, as we're trying to wind down the day. And so that's pretty important. Any of the recommendations when we're talking about just sort of like as athletes, how we want to be, the kinds of habits that have been helpful for you?
I've been trying to stretch every weekend.
Okay.
At least. And then
just every weekend? Okay. All right.
Stretching at least every weekend. And then I'll usually do it, stretch 2 or 3 times during the week.
Okay.
So just making sure that I don't tear anything or things like that. But
any particular things that you're focusing on when it comes to stretching?
Stretching every part of my body. So I work lower to upper, and I have like my whole routine and everything. So
okay, can you walk us through the routine?
Okay, so I usually stretch out my hamstrings and my quads and my calves first, and then I'll go to hips. I usually do my like hip swivels and and then I do abs, stretching out my abs, and then I do all the the baseball stretches where you like have your palm out and you put your fingers down. Those for my arms, and then that's it.
Okay. Well, I think it's been interesting to observe and watch you adjust to having a little different rhythm and tempo and dealing with an injury. But also, I think also encouraging, and what I heard you sort of describe is the way with which you can modify and or find ways to keep yourself as active and as mobile as you possibly can. And listen, there's still going to always be an adjustment coming back from an injury with regard to, your cardio and the types of movements that typically are expected and required to play the game. But certainly important, I think, to make sure that we realize as athletes that there are things that we can do to still keep ourselves reasonably active and focused on that when we have a disruption to our typical schedule. So awesome. All right. So appreciate that extra segment, a segment we hadn't really, at least a topic that we didn't plan for, right? It happens. But it's hopefully some insights and some thoughts from Soph's experience that can help you all as you're thinking through it. So just want to give everybody a heads up on some things that are coming up. We're very excited. We're going to be working with some high school coaches and other coaches that are coaching in the women's game in the coming weeks, doing some guest interviews. We are also a little less now than 100 days from the start of the women's college basketball season. Okay, so we're going to be doing some conference breakdowns for you and talking about some preseason predictions. So that's something that we are actively engaged in our research right now, doing that. We're also going to do that not just at the Division I level, but we're going to do some of that work at the Division II and Division III level to give some coverage across those levels of basketball across the country, help people be as educated as they can about the game at as wide a place as we can, but also continue to grow our network and continue to engage other leaders that are active leaders here in the women's game. So really excited about that. All right, so give me one player that you're really interested. This is, again, just to kind of foreshadow here into our preseason discussions. Give me one player that you're really intrigued to watch play in the women's college game this year. What's one player that you're like, I'm really interested to see how this goes?
Georgia Amore at Kentucky.
Okay. I wondered how long it would be before we got down this path. Tell me why.
I'm just excited to see the new Kentucky team, see how many Virginia Tech players went over to Kentucky. How many trained?
Well, they're Kentucky players now. That's what the Kentucky fans would say, right? How many players came with Coach Brooks? Georgia Amore and Clara Strack, I believe for sure both went. If I'm being honest, it's possible I could be missing somebody else. If we were also including players that were recruited, I don't know who else went, but those are certainly two names. It's interesting. I'm a big fan of Clara Strack. I actually thought she gave them some big contributions off the bench late last year at some different times. Obviously, unfortunately, Elizabeth Kitley went down with an injury. And so, that certainly impacted, but I was intrigued now thinking about her making that transition into her sophomore year and how she might contribute. Certainly a change of scenery and an adjustment for Georgia Amore as she finishes up her college career. I'll be interested to see how the year goes. I agree. Yeah. For sure. Because I also think, she's a player that gets a lot done at her size, and obviously making a transition from the ACC to the SEC. Arguably, I think the ACC is probably the strong. Maybe top to bottom could be the best women's league in the country year in and year out. I'm sure the SEC is not too far behind. The Big Ten has clearly had some teams, obviously with Iowa the last year, Ohio State, Michigan's had some teams, right? So there's plenty to be intrigued about. I'm really curious if I were giving you the answer. I hate to say the obvious one is Paige Beckers.
Yeah.
I think there are probably plenty players that could be that are on this list. We'll get into some more of that as we start talking about conferences and leagues in preseason polls. We're going to give you our own keys to the gym preseason top 25, and we'll get into some conference insights as well. But I am interested. This is a player that coming in, she's player of the year as a freshman, right? I know some of the larger media outlets have reminded us of that, but that's a player that when, if you're really, again, there are many, but she's one that it's unfortunate, right? She's had to deal with she has had a couple of significant ongoing injuries and has clearly done the work to get herself back and prepared. Had a very nice, made very strong contributions to her team last year. But with a full healthy season, what can she do? We're talking about impact players. She can play multiple positions for them. Is a point guard for sure. Is a lead guard probably would be a fairer term, but she does. She is a very effective passer, screener, cutter, shooter. Like she's a complete player across the board. So I'm sure she will make a transition to the professional level pretty smoothly. But she's certainly a player. And then there are obviously some players that really arrived on the scene last year. Juju Watkins will be intriguing. Both USC and UCLA, they didn't miss in their recruiting.
No.
So it's not as if those programs got weaker. And so I expect those two teams to really have strong years again. But Juju Watkins is going to be interesting. But we're going to get into this a little deeper. I just wanted to put Soph on the spot here a little bit and ask her who she was intrigued or interested in seeing how to transition. But certainly a transition from one school to the other, going through that transfer process is important to think about. So again, we're off to another start of the school year. I'm excited and glad to hear that you're, enjoying your new school experience, and know you'll be back on the court, ready to go 100% here, in not too short a time. But what a great time of year! I always used to say October 15th was like the second what? It's like second Christmas, because it's usually when college practices start and we really get deep into it. But man, we're really heading into an incredible time of the year. We've got a great finish coming up here to the WNBA season. And then right on the heels of the WNBA season, we'll be jumping into the college hoop season. I was looking today, and it looks like there are going to be some games starting that first week of November. We're going to be right at it, and we're going to be getting deep into the college season and at all levels. So appreciate you all joining us today for another episode of Keys to the Gym. Any parting shots from you here today, PG?
Awesome.
Yeah, folks, someone PG with few words, right? Few words. But hey, great thoughts today, PG. Thanks so much for your insights and sharing some of your personal experiences. We hope that they're certainly helpful to other young athletes out there. But with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off with episode 4, Keys to the Gym. Get back at it, lace them up, and get to work. We'll see you next week.
Unlocking our hearts, three generations, tearing cords apart, more than a game, it's in our blood. Keys to the gym, our family's love, our family's eternal love.